everyone, to Watch Challenge. On each episode, we challenge ourselves to find and watch a film of a particular type and then report back the results to each other and you fine listeners. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Mike Wendt, and this episode's challenge is female-directed horror. And Aaron, this is we're in the month of March, so this is Women's History Month. So we definitely picked, I think, a good one for the month of March here.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have to. I'll put a link maybe in our show notes for it. You sent me the most helpful list that could have happened. If you want to explain that, how you found that.
So I was in preparation for this episode a few weeks back, I was just Googling female directed horror films, and obviously IMDb and Google brought up a bunch, but this one particular link on Mubi.com, so that's MUBI.com, which is a pretty good, it's a site, but also a streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I think it's like $5 a month or something like that. But they've curated a list in chronological order from 1966 to 2022 of all these horror films directed by female directors. So this was like the Bible for
oh my God, yeah,
this particular episode. And I'm sure there are some pre 1966
for sure.
But it was just immensely helpful and also just eye opening of like how many horror films have been made by female directors.
Oh, for sure. Like when you sent that to me, I was like, I'll scroll through, I'm sure. And I'd seen a few, but it just kept scrolling and scrolling. And then at the end, it was like load more. I was like, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I have quite a watch list now, but also, because I'd mentioned, Summer Party Massacre, and so I think that was the only one I mentioned on the previous episode when we were announcing this topic. And I was like, I just had a tingling for like the 80s slasher, because I'd found like 5 or 6, I think, female directors that did slasher movies in particular, a very specific type of horror.
Yeah.
And I was going to go back to that, but once you sent me that list, I was like, oh my God, it's just like, the world has opened up. Holy cow, what do I pick out of here? But also, we mentioned it real quick at the end of the last episode, but like, why? I mean, other than what you said, Women's History Month, but also in reaction to like our VHS action, like, some of our, we only have a few episodes in the can right now, but like, there's been a couple of them pretty full of testosterone.
Yeah.
And horror was something I wanted to revisit more throughout the year, and this made me do that rather than just in the fall. But that, I was thinking originally of like, there's the film critic Alicia Malone has a great book called The Female Gaze that does, obviously it's a play on like the male gaze, but she's kind of like taking it back. And she kind of does what that Mubi list did, where it was like, she went through and picked specific films, not just horror though, I should say, throughout film history, that was like, these were made and had a specific like auteur point of view because a woman was creatively behind the project. And I was like, the stuff I watched for this particular episode and remembered of seeing previously, I was like, I don't think you get that movie with like, a male behind the camera calling the creative shots. I think it would be different.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think just sometimes how some of these scenes, especially the films from the 80s, which had a lot of female nudity, I feel like they're shot in a way that's a little more classy than sometimes when you had some of these other, especially like the Roger Corman style horror films directed by men that sometimes just were very like ogling, I guess.
Yeah, Roger Corman, I would say more of the Russ Meyer.
Yes, yeah.
Ogling, with the camera.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, the 80s slasher ones that I've seen directed by women still have like all the requisite nudity to it. But maybe it's something in my head where like knowing that it was, like a female cinematographer, female director.
Yes.
It doesn't feel as voyeuristic and gross sometimes.
Right.
Maybe that's my baggage, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. So yeah, you're right though. There's still like a ton of sex scenes and all these things, but yeah, it's just done in a way that, it comes out a little classier maybe.
I will say, I'm going to put a pin in that for the sex scenes, because I actually have a quote from my main one that I picked about the actress saying like, I was grateful that there was a female director. Like I was so much more comfortable having nudity in this movie.
Oh, absolutely. So, absolutely.
Do you have any honorable mentions, Mike? You want to throw out before we jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I was really digging into this list, and I mean, there were several that I unfortunately, just due to like certain time restraints, like I didn't get to watch that many, but I will say that just looking at some of the titles and looking what they're about, like I was really intrigued by the movie Blood Sisters, it's 1987.
Okay.
I am a fan of Humanoids from the Deep.
Oh, me
Uh,
too.
and that was one I remember. Sometimes like my birthday tended to fall on a Saturday, which for anybody from the Cleveland area, that like the first or the third Saturday of the month is when the Cedar Lee and Capitol would show like a midnight movie,
Oh, right.
or the cult film series. And the one year my birthday fell on the day of Humanoids from the Deep. So I got like a group of people to go. It was a lot of fun. But then, there's another one that's more recent. I think it came out in 2018, a movie called Revenge that I suggest.
Yeah, that was that's one of my honorable mentions too. Actually, we have our
Yeah,
first
very
overlap.
cool. Yeah, I mean, just a very cool revenge story. A very unique twist on it, and I remember going to see it with a pretty lively crowd at the Cinematheque a couple years ago. Where, yeah, I mean, there were some gasps from the audience, which was
Oh,
always
I was one of them.
fun.
That one's really fascinating because, like, in the long line of horror films, there's it's very weird to say, but there's a subgenre of like rape revenge horror movies. Like A Spit on Your Grave is one of the one that maybe started that genre.
Oh
Off the top of
yeah,
my head, I'm not sure, but it's definitely one of those that stays in your head if you've seen it. And Revenge really plays with that because it does, heads up for anybody who wants to watch it. It does start off, there's a rape scene. And by the end of it, though, she's okay.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But there are a lot of squirming. Like, it is I kind of have it in my head as like one of those body horror ones where you're like, I can't believe someone would survive what she survived, but also the pain she inflicts on the three guys that are in the movie too. You're just like, I was squirming a lot, like glass and foot and some. I mean, it gets grisly.
One of those edgier seats, like I can't believe I'm watching this, or I can't believe the pain this person's
Yeah,
inflicting
yeah.
on
And I'm
yeah,
also like, I was kind of cheering for it because like they have it coming. Like there's no doubt where the audience sympathies are there. It's with Jen, the female protagonist in that one, for
absolutely.
sure.
Any other ones for you?
Yeah, my other shout out. Actually, I just watched a couple days ago. It was another modern one. It's Shadow in the Cloud from
Okay.
2020. It's Chloe Grace Moretz. It's literally her show. She plays a World War II pilot. It's
Oh
set,
yeah.
it's set in well, it's not. It's set in the air actually, but it's from New Zealand because the director Roseanne. I don't remember her last name. Sorry, Roseanne. She's a New Zealander. She's a Chinese New Zealander, born and
Okay.
raised in New Zealand, and it got a weird release because it came out in 2020. So they played it whatever Toronto did that year for a festival, and it won their Midnight Madness like People's Choice Award. But then
Yeah.
Amazon grabbed it, so I saw it because it popped up on Amazon. Didn't see it then, but it's one of those the less said the better about it because I only
Yeah.
knew it was like she's like has a special package. She's on like a bomber jet. She hops on a bomber jet, and don't watch the preview if you haven't seen it. It hinted at that old Bugs Bunny cartoon where there's like a gremlin on the plane. I was like, that can't be what this is about. But I just was like on the edge, not edge of my seat, like in suspense. Although there is a lot of suspense to it. Like I couldn't believe what they pull off as a movie. There's like it's a mix of genres, so some people may be like, "Get out of here!" There's no way. Yeah, there's no way. It's a movie. Come on. I saw somebody on Letterboxd mention like if you were able to go along with either of any of the Crank movies, like it's over the top, but it knows what it's
Yeah.
doing. And it hops genres, and it's got an anachronistic synthesizer soundtrack to it, but it's a World War II movie.
Yeah.
Like I was just smiling the whole time. I thought it was phenomenal, and it's definitely by
Yeah.
the end you're like, oh, this is actually like a like a feminist thesis wrapped up in this like crazy genre World War II movie.
Oh, I'm gonna add that to my list because I remember seeing
Yeah.
I remember seeing it showing up during the pandemic, and I was like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, like that seems up my
Yeah.
alley, but
Yeah.
I just haven't had the chance to watch
But
it
if
yet.
it's intriguing at all, and it's one of those I would recommend for a great time. Don't read the synopsis on Letterboxd or IMDb, and don't watch the trailer because after watching the movie, I watched the trailer. I was like, I would not have had that much fun if I knew that scene, that scene, that scene, and that scene were coming.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's oh my god, I can't believe we had our first overlap. That's great. At least it
Yeah.
was our honorable mentions, not our actual picks. I don't know how long
Yeah.
it's going to take for that, but eventually someday we're going to pick the same
Yeah,
one.
we're both going to pick the same movie, but
So, all right, Mike. So, what did you end up your actual pick for this watch challenge?
so I wanted to. I think as you kind of mentioned, I wanted to go with the '80s film that I had never seen before, and I ended up picking Home Sweet Home from
Ooh.
1981.
It's 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, and our top story continues to be the intensive police dragnet for an armed and dangerous escaped mental patient. 26-year-old Jay Jones escaped from the Hobart State Hospital for the criminally insane last night after killing an attendant and leaving a guard in critical condition. Jones was committed to Hobart 8 years ago after a lengthy and well-publicized trial following the bludgeoning death of both of his parents. We talked with a state police department spokesman shortly after Jones's escape last night.
He's extremely dangerous and probably armed. He could be on PCP. Jones is Caucasian, 6 feet 3, 220 pounds with curly brown hair. If you see anyone answering this description, stay clear of him and notify your local law enforcement agency immediately.
It is directed by Nettie Pena, and if you look up her IMDb, she only has 2 credits to her directing name. So,
Okay.
this was her debut, and then she made a video documentary about.
Oh,
I think it's like a pro environmental kind of documentary called "They're Not Green." But all right, to give you the plot of this movie, it is an escaped mental patient steals a station wagon and makes his way to the Bradleys' Thanksgiving celebration, where he plans to make them a little less thankful. Um,
oh my God.
so right off the bat, I mean, this movie, I think there's a pretty entertaining YouTube channel called The Kill Count,
Yeah.
which I watched after I watched this movie, which has very funny commentary about the amount of kills in this movie. And he mentions that at 0 minutes, almost 30 seconds, you immediately have one kill in the film. Spoiler alert! But the interesting thing about this movie is that it stars Jake Steinfeld, who is better known from the late 80s, early 90s as Body by Jake.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I haven't thought about that in ages.
He plays the mental patient.
Awesome.
He's mostly a mute, but he makes like these like kind of growling sounds. I think this film would have been a little bit better if there was some kind of connection, like if his character was some kind of family member or something. Why does he why is he going to this particular place?
Sure.
It's never really explained. He just kind of he just starts driving and killing people.
It's like that in cold blood vibe of like the randomness is terrifying.
Yes.
Okay.
There are parts of this movie that were a little bit boring. Especially when you're introduced to the family. It's a Thanksgiving gathering.
Mhm.
There is a large group of people. Some of them are horny, so they're making out. There is a man who has white face paint and a guitar at all times. So he's playing a guitar, going around, and his character's name, I have to get this right because his character's name is Mistake. So he almost looks like a Kiss Army member, or like
I was thinking like a mime or something.
kind of like a mime, or like a member of like the Germs or something, like like yeah. So basically you're really there because a lot of these characters don't really matter, but you're really there for some of the inventive kills, I would say,
Oh,
that
yeah.
are injected in this movie. There is one involving the hood of a car. I won't spoil for that. And then also Mistake has probably the most inventive kill, I will say, involving his aforementioned guitar. So
Okay.
what it is, it's one of those, I'm sure it's not as well known, amongst a lot of those early 80s slashers.
Yeah.
But I do give it credit for being a Thanksgiving movie. I don't think there's that many like Thanksgiving movies. There aren't that many,
Right.
aside from like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and all that. But I kind of wish that Thanksgiving was a real movie. Like that was a fake trailer from Grindhouse.
House. Yeah. I was like,
But I think this is almost like the closest thing to that.
okay.
But yeah, it was certainly a time capsule. And just Body by Jake's interesting performance was just one for the books, I will say.
Oh yeah. No, that's well, I was thinking too when you were discussing the plot, because your pick last time when you were talking about exploitation was Patrick, and
Yeah.
wasn't that like it wasn't a mental? Was he? No, he was like comatose.
He was, but
Okay.
he went comatose for killing his parents. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I have a thing for mental patients.
Well, also because like we were joking that Patrick kind of sounded like the plot for Halloween to a certain extent.
Right. Yeah.
Although he wasn't like up and physically being a killer, he was using his mind. But this one, Home Sweet Home from 1981, definitely is feeling some like after effects of Halloween and escape mental patient. Especially steals a station wagon. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of the car of the 80s, like to a certain degree, for families. But that's pretty. Yeah, it was like, what if it was Halloween, but it said at Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of
Well, I feel like I'm gonna have to do a deep dive, like to see maybe why this director only made one other film after that. But from what I've heard, or from what I've gathered, is that most of the people who are involved with this movie, who have some notoriety, they don't really mention this movie, or they don't really look
Oh,
fondly on it. So like
interesting.
Jake doesn't like. I heard in an interview he was asked about it, and he just like, next question. The
Well, I mean, do we really want to trust Body by Jake anyway?
Right.
I don't know.
The little girl in the film is Vanessa Shaw,
I
who,
know that name.
she was in like The Sandlot and Hocus Pocus
Oh,
and Eyes Wide Shut. I heard she was interviewed about this particular movie, and also just refused to talk about it. But she was like 5 or something when she was in
well, yeah, I was gonna say at that point too. Yeah, I don't remember. I was 5. Like,
it.
or I mean, maybe it was traumatic. I don't know. Like that's kind of child actors that young on horror movie sets are kind of. I mean, maybe it's like the dad in me, but I'm like, are you being careful with that? Like, I
Right.
don't know. Especially 81.
Well, maybe the director was probably very sensitive with the young actress.
Well,
Maybe.
yes, hopefully.
So what did you end up picking, Aaron?
All right, so I went with so I my two honorable mentions are more current, and I did that on purpose because I went with an older one. I actually went pre slasher film, pre 80s, because there's this Stephanie Rothman film I've meant to watch.
Mm.
I've seen a few of her other ones, but I hadn't watched The Velvet Vampire from
Oh.
1971, also known as Cemetery Girls. I don't know why, but whatever you can do to get butts in seats, I guess, at a certain point in
Yeah.
time.
You will meet her at night, in a dark place. She's beautiful, and she's waiting for you, waiting to love you to death. Who was this strange and beautiful creature who called herself Diane, who lived among the dead and the forgotten?
Diane, there's one thing I don't get. The headstone said your husband died in 1875.
And what were her sinister plans for the attractive young couple she enticed into her evil world? What was the source of the malignant power by which she drew them into an endless night of unearthly horror?
So actually, you mentioned Roger Corman earlier. Stephanie Rothman comes out of the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking, New World Pictures. In fact, she's fascinating for a little bit. I'm just kind of slowly working my way through because she doesn't have a huge filmography.
Yeah.
But this was a good excuse to go back and watch this one. She studied filmmaking at USC in the 1960s. She's like one of those first people who were like there at when film school started.
Yeah.
First few years she's there, and then she ended up being the first woman to win the Directors Guild of America fellowship. Like as a student, they'll honor great work from a student. And
Wow.
she won that. So I was like, all right, way to go. Another good first there. But then I don't know the politics of her biography that well, but like then she went to work with Roger Corman, which I'm a huge fan of Roger Corman. So by all means, go work with Roger Corman. You know, he's the
Yeah.
one who's going to end up giving us, you know, Bogdanovich and Bruce Stern and Nicholson and Scorsese and Luke, like, you know, that whole film school, like the film brat generation in the 70s, like
Yeah.
all worked with Roger Corman. Pretty solid way to start. But so she did some, I forget, like the Student Nurses or something, one of the exploitation genre films. And that
Sure.
was a huge hit. So he was like, hey, all right, we need you to do Student Nurses too, because, you know, let's make this money. She's like, yeah, I don't really want to. And so she made Velvet Vampire instead, which she co-wrote with her husband, who was also served as the producer of it. It's really, so the name of it is The Velvet Vampire. So guess what we have in this horror movie? We got vampires. But what's weird though is if you go with, well, I don't know if Cemetery Girls works either. I don't know what else you could have named it, but I wrote down when I was watching it, like actual what we would consider vampirism or like an act of a vampire or the word vampire
Yeah.
isn't used until like 40-45 minutes into the movie.
Ah,
Like
okay.
it's this great, oh sorry, the plot. Sorry. So Lee and Susan, male and female, it's Michael Blodgett from Valley of the Dolls. Or Beyond the Valley of Dolls, sorry. Like I recognize him as like, you've been in some other shitty movie I've seen. I recognize you. The Russ Meyer classic the year
Oh,
before.
yeah.
So I guess he was a little bit of a name. So it's him, Lee and Susan. They accept invitation of this mysterious vixen named Diane to go out to her desert estate, and they do. And that part to me had some strong Rocky Horror Picture Show vibes because it's like
Yeah.
it's a couple, they're married, and they go out to this like totally out of the way thing, but instead of having Dr. Frankenfurter there, you've got Diane, who they will slowly learn is a vampire, but Diane is seducing them both. It's a vampire who's just like, oh yeah, I'm here to seduce all y'all. So it's really interesting. So that's what I had, that kind of little bit of a Rocky Horror vibe there, but less comedy, I would say. So it's interesting how it plays with sexuality, and there is some nudity and some sex scenes in there. And as I mentioned earlier, the actress who plays Susan, Sherry Mills, but also Celeste Yarnall, who played Diane the vampire, both mentioned in interviews how great it was working with Stephanie Rothman as director, because when they had those like more sensitive scenes requiring nudity or simulated
Yeah.
sex, she said that it was often just like myself, my co-star, the director, and I think it was a cameraman. It was a guy. There's a cameraman. So it was like,
Sure.
very intimate. She like cleared the set. We don't make anybody feel uncomfortable or nervous or whatever. And also this is in the Roger Corman school. So it's like, 100,000 maybe is your budget. So it was like, okay, that's good to hear. It's taking care of the folks that you're, creating this with. And the thing is, though, it doesn't feel like, and I love a good cheapy Roger Corman movie, but it doesn't feel that way visually. Like there's this great, just sort of gothic mood over the whole thing.
Mhm.
There's kind of a cool, like late 60s, early 70s. Well, there's a great rock song to kick off the credits, but like, it's just really sitting with this kind of very gothic horror, but also the colors, because you're out in the desert, they really pop. Because you're
Yeah.
just around like all this bleak desert. But it plays with so many vampire tropes that I loved it. One, I was like, when is the earliest female vampire movie? Usually it's like the guy is the seductive
Right.
Dracula kind of character. So I dug that it was like this woman doing that same thing, but and also just seducing everybody, which is gorgeous. So, would assume it would work for, everyone. But then it's also just the way she frames like door frames and like these long rows of columns. Like it shows you how vast this like estate is that they're at, but also how isolated you are because nobody else is around.
Yeah.
Fucking with vampire tropes, it's like the middle of the desert. That's not where vampires are supposed to be. So it doesn't really spend a ton of time setting up like, oh, here's the new lore of the vampire. It just is
Yeah.
as you're watching it. Because by the 1971, like the audience is like, yeah, we got vampires. No, we got it. Fine. So that was really kind of a cool way to approach it. That I was like, I don't know if you're going to get that unless you have Stephanie Rothman and then her husband co-writing this and then her specifically directing it. And I'm sure Mike, Roger Corman, like you could hear the pitch, like,
Oh yeah.
sexy female vampire, we can make money with that because he's there to make the money.
Yeah.
And whatever. So like, yeah, but then unfortunately, it didn't make that much money. It became kind of a cult film as time went by. But based on her first movie being a very financial success for New World Pictures, this one was not. She went on and she had a bit more of a career. But
I want to do like, I kind of want to like add all hers to a watch list just because some of these ones, I'm using the Mubi page, but I mean, Terminal Island looks very interesting. Group Marriage. I don't. It's like
Oh
it
yeah,
seems like she has a very unique filmography.
she does. I've seen Working Girl. She did in '74. It's one of those like sexploitation comedies though that you only get in the '70s. Like you just watch it go, oh my god, they would never make this movie now. She I have a fascination, which we may have to do at some point, with like the beach party movies.
Oh yeah.
So I've seen one she co-directed, or did she directed or co-wrote? She directed, I think, called "It's a Bikini World." It's terrible. But her the first one of hers I saw was her and Jack Hill did Bloodbath way back when.
Oh wow.
It was like mid '60s, but like it's one of those '60s movies where like you see the poster, and you're like, oh my god, that looks so grisly. No, it's 1965 or whatever. Like it's not that movie just yet, but
that's great.
Yeah, she's an interesting director. And I think the tone too I really like is like they're having fun with it. Like it's not a official like gothic horror movie, but it has those elements. But there's like some odd moments of like levity, if not just outright comedy, not inappropriately or like off balance tonally. Like it works. We're like, okay, because like you could be hanging out with your wife and a vampire and not know it's a vampire, and also have a laugh every now and then. So that works. But
I think as we're talking more about this, and we kind of talked about it at the beginning, but it's like the number of opportunities that Corman gave female directors was, very ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure. I know he's still around, so at some point when he's not with us, I'm sure like that's going to be probably, one of his leading legacies, aside from, like kind of helping the horror genre get further along.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I just clicked on his name. He's currently 95 as of this recording. So, oof. Yeah, that was one of the anecdotes, or not anecdotes, one of the little trivia facts. I think it was on IMDb, was that he hired Stephanie Rothman right out of film school and the Directors Guild Fellowship to be his assistant, who the other applicant at the time was Julie, who would end up becoming his assistant, and then his wife a few years later. So yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a documentary actually on, not to mention Corman so much, we're talking about female directed horror, but there's a documentary about Corman that does actually specifically mention how he was like, you got a good idea, you can put together a movie on budget, on time. I'm not worried about your gender, come on it. Like, he was very very much like that. So well, that wraps up our female-directed horror watch challenge. Mike, it's your turn to pick the next challenge. What have you got for us for next time?
Let's go with Blaxploitation.
A favorite.
Yes.
We're really hanging out in exploitation. There's so many offshoots of that type of thing, though.
Yeah, maybe after that we'll have to do like religious movie or something.
Or like super like
I don't know. We have to shake
European.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably doesn't need too much explanation. I think that's a pretty well-known genre, so don't need to really explain too much on Blaxploitation. That'll be our challenge for next time. So looking forward to seeing what you come up with there, Mike.
Absolutely. Same to you.
All right.
And everybody have a great week.
Yeah. We'll talk soon.